So the riders in the 265.5 kilometres Liege Bastogne Liege now making ready for a long day in the Belgian Ardennes, and this the 84th running of the oldest classic on the calendar, La Doyenne of all of the single day races, and it's the 4th round in the World Cup as well. And this will be the finishing line for the lucky people who come home in the town of Ons, the Rue Jean Jaurès, after some 7 hours in the saddle. Joining me in the commentary box, Paul Sherwen as ever. And Paul, after the Flèche Wallonne, this we expect to be possibly a good defence by Liege Bastogne, or are we going to see Bo Hamburger bounce up and do it again?
Well, I think all of Belgium would like to see Frank van den Broek put in a great performance here, because second in Flèche Wallonne just a couple of days ago shows that he's doing things just right after his win in Ghent-Wevelgem, and when it comes down to Liege Bastogne Liege, he feels very confident.
The race making its start in the Place Saint-Lambert in Liège, and the riders coming down to the start line. Before we go and join the action, here's Laurent Jalabert signing in, only 19th in the Flèche Wallonne, and I don't think his form is quite what he expects at this time of the year.
Certainly he's never won Liege Bastogne Liege before, and he would very dearly love to do that. Maurizio Fondriest, riding for Cofidis, is a man who normally we would expect to ride well on conditions like this, but he's searching for his form at the moment and not having really the glory of days gone by.
Former world champion Fondriest. Liege Bastogne smiling and looking for a defence of the title, which he took last year. First Italian to win since Moreno Argentin back in 1991.
Bartley also the winner of the World Cup last year and would like to get a few points today to drag himself up in that competition just a little bit higher. The leader at the moment, another Italian, Franco Ballerini, after his great win last weekend in Paris-Roubaix.
Ballerini here, I think, because he won Paris-Roubaix and because he leads. There's Frank van den Broek waving to the crowd, got the first cheers out of them as well. He's a hot favourite now. He's developing this year for sure, especially after his victory in Ghent-Wevelgem and before that in Paris-Nice. And really, he really did make something out of Flèche Wallonne by coming away for that second place. Here for us, Paul, one of the heroes of Flèche Wallonne, Michael Bogert, the champion of the Netherlands.
Great ride by him, very aggressive, and I think a lot stronger than Laurent Jalabert. Laurent Dufaux, on the other hand, not regarded as a one-day man, but he's got excellent form at the moment, but always willing to talk to the press, Rolf Sorensen.
Winner in 1993. And Rolf Sorensen, always a safe bet to win at something big every season. And the champion of the Olympic Games in Atlanta, Pascal Richard, slowly coming back to form after a series of injuries and operations, and now beginning to, well, he hopes what will be a full season for him on the triumphant Casino team. 25 victories so far Casino have had this season.
Well, it's great to see on the start line of Liege Bastogne Liege this year, Phil, that the sun has come down, because in recent years it's been terrible weather for Liege Bastogne Liege, but I don't think we're going to see the snows of recent years.
Jean-Marie Leblanc, the director of the Tour de France, the Society of the Tour de France, also now the organisers of Liege Bastogne Liege. The riders are away. That was the scene this morning in the sun. We're now going to pick up the action out on the course with a little more than 90 kilometres to go. And these are the pictures of a breakaway which formed at around about 37 kilometres at the town of Trou-de-Bras, and we're still clear now as they are 95 kilometres from the finish. We have made the turn down at Bastogne, and as everybody knows with this great classic, all the hard bits come after you leave Bastogne.
Certainly is. These riders now will be looking at the Côte de Stocker on the horizon, a very difficult climb indeed, and that is what they will expect, because now we're coming into a part of Liege Bastogne Liege where the climbs come on a very repetitive nature. After the climb of Stocker, they drop back down into the same town of Stavelot that they started it from, and then head out to the Côte de Haute-Levée and a very long stretch of road out towards the motor racing circuit of Francorchamps.
Just over 170 kilometres covered by these riders now, as we take a look here at a very famous name in the years gone by, Gianni Bugno. Will he or won't he ride in the upcoming Tour of Italy? And Bugno, we're never sure whether he's having a quiet season before announcing retirement or whether he wants just one more big year. Former double world champion, former double winner of the Tour de France stage at Alpe d'Huez as well.
Trying to leap off the front of the the lead group. In fact, here is Stuart O'Grady, the Australian rider, realising that if he can get to the foot of Stocker with a slight advantage, he can pick his way through the town, which is in fact a very tricky approach. And in the main field, a lot of work has been done by the Mapei squad over the last few kilometres as they come over the top of the Côte d'Azemont and then drop down into the Trois-Ponts town.
And the town of Trois-Ponts, it's a really delightful little town, as are all these Ardennes villages and towns around here. It's perfect cycling countryside. Well, Stuart O'Grady said he wouldn't get in an early break today. He was going to try and have an easier ride at the start. So what did he do? He was in the breakaway after the first 20-odd miles or so.
I think it's just bigger than him. Once he sees a group of riders going up the road, he feels that he has to go with it, and he just likes to ride an aggressive bike race. But in a couple of years' time, he's going to have to calm himself down just a little bit and make sure that when he does go into these moves, they're a lot closer to the finish. Good to see as well Kevin Livingston getting into that early breakaway, and Jonathan Vorders, who rides for the US Postal Service.
2 US flags on the board there. Michael Anderson is the Swedish rider, former winner of the Tour of South Africa and the Tour of the Cape. Rider 163 there is Simone Borghese from the Mercatoni Uno team.
And the panic coming into this squad because of the fact that Stuart O'Grady has nicked off the front there. You can just see him going around the corner with a white Gann jersey on his shoulders. And the man that has been sent up here for Laurent Jalabert is Mikel Zarabaitia, returning really to the top level of the sport after, for him, what was a very difficult back operation a couple of years ago, riding for the Banesto squad. And as always, the Casino man out looking to make sure they're represented in all of these breakaways, Rolf Yeerman.
And Yeerman looking pretty sharp, as all the Casino boys seem to be at the moment. They're going to be well boosted by the victory the other day of Bo Hamburger in the Flèche Wallonne. 1 minute 45 back to the main field now for this group. Borghese just tacked in on the back. Stuart O'Grady in the distance there. We're heading now towards Trois-Ponts and on then down to Stavelot. And Stuart O'Grady clearly deciding he wanted to break up the leading group and see if anybody was strong enough to come and join him. He's certainly putting down a big challenge with some 90 plus kilometres still to ride.
It was funny talking to these two riders last night. I stayed in the same hotel as the Gann team, and O'Grady and Henk Vogels came down and said, you know, this is not our kind of race, but we've not done it before, so we thought we'd just see how we could handle it.
Well, sooner or later, Vogels or O'Grady were going to commentate as a big winner, because they do keep trying. There's no doubt they have the talent.
They certainly do. This man not scared at all, having been at the head of the race since the 37th kilometre. And we head down to Stocker, which is in fact after 175 kilometres covered, and O'Grady still trying to get away on his own before he comes down into Stocker. And at the top of that climb, a very wonderful monument to the victories of Eddy Merckx, the greatest cyclist in the world. Back in the main field, obviously the word has gone out from the Mapei riders to try and pull it all together, with Bugno on the front here. A little bit further back, Nico Matin, the very good friend and teammate of Frank van den Broek. So obviously the word has gone out in the Mapei squad today that the man for the day is going to be Frank van den Broek. And very sad news coming to us at the start this morning about Johan Museo, who had that bad crash last week in Paris-Roubaix. In fact, he has been taken into intensive care at the hospital in Ghent because the injury to his knee, in fact, has become very infected. So we hope that he recovers from that and comes back to the great form that he's had over the past few weeks.
Short descent and now 1 kilometre climb here up the Côte de Stocker. 22% the climb. He goes up to 130 metres. And it's exactly a kilometre wrong.
Doesn't seem like it's an awful lot, the fact that it only goes up 200 metres, but the repetitive nature of all of these climbs down here in the Ardennes makes this really one of the toughest classics.
And you see you have that dead right-hand turn as well. You can't exactly charge up this hill. You start from scratch again.
Just on the front there, the Casino rider Rolf Yeerman starting to set the pace. The Asics CGA rider there is Alexandra Scheffer from Kazakhstan. And these men now at the moment really just starting to survive, because that group behind at one time more than 5 minutes and 50 seconds advantage is crumbling quite dramatically now, and it's well within 1.5 minutes. So with another climb coming up shortly after this, the climb of Haute-Levée, we could well see the whole advantage of this group of riders being wiped out in the space of around about 10 kilometres.
Well, these riders just in a little steady tempo. Nobody really pushing the pace. They're not really worried too much about Stuart O'Grady out in front.
In fact, a big recovery by the main field there. Stefano Zanini on the front here for Mapei. Now, he has brought Vandenbroek into an ideal position at the foot of the Côte de Stocker. Vandenbroek there in second position must be very happy with the work that his teammates have done for him so far, because this is the best place to be. It's a very narrow climb and a fast descent off the top of this mountain.
And a lot of riders now forcing the way through here. Zanini fell on his face in the forest in the Paris-Roubaix event when he was World Cup leader, and he saw the jersey pass over to his teammate Ballerini. Well, clearly no long-lasting effects of that right on the front of the chase back. And this group now is massing a little bit to try and sweep up that leading group. They won't know exactly how many are still in front of them because they've been away for so long, and they may not yet realise Stuart O'Grady. In fact, O'Grady isn't in front now. There he is on the right of our picture, so he's been picked up. You can see this climb. It really is a nasty little climb. And they have the randonnée over the same course here around April every year, which starts down in Tilth and then covers the same route. And this really spreads out the tourists as well.
Well, that must be why Stuart O'Grady wanted to get a little bit of a lead before the climb of Stocker there, just so that he could lose 10 or 15 seconds on the slopes of the hill. Looking back now into the town of Stavelot, you get a chance to see just how rapidly this climb goes uphill. And there was O'Grady just disappearing out of the back of the group.
There's a few riders cracking the legs now. Bladsden of the team Deutsche Telekom. He's also gone to the back. This very narrow road, you see, you try and lock on the front and keep the pressure on, and everybody else just grovels now as they continue the climb. Once over the top of Stocko, they've got a short run through the woods, and then they start the climb of the Côte de Haute-Levée, which is another little bit of a brute, and then they keep coming at them thick and fast. These roads are very heavy roads to ride, Liege Bastogne Liege, and this is one of the classics everybody really does want to win.
Certainly does. It's great to see Laurent Dufaux there on the left-hand side, the Festina rider, who this year I think is riding some excellent one-day races, and it bodes well for the performance of Festina later on in the year when we go to the Tour de France, because with Alex Zuller, Laurent Dufaux and Richard Virenque, I think they're going to put the Deutsche Telekom team into a lot of difficulty. The front group now, and at the back of it, the big figure of Michael Anderson wearing number 92. And in front of him is Kevin Livingston, the Cofidis rider, who for the first time really at the front of any of these big races this year.
Kevin, for my money, the better climber of the two there. Anderson will not be happy on these climbs. He's a pretty good time trialist, but he won't like the climbs at all. Michael Anderson slipping back from that lead group, I think, now. Dufaux, sorry, Paul.
Frank Vandenbroek comfortable on the right-hand side, and Udo Bolts, the man who was very aggressive 2 or 3 days ago in the Flèche Wallonne, on the pink jersey just on the left-hand side of the picture.
These guys doing just enough now. The strong men holding the front half of the peloton, which if we could see a shot from the helicopter right now. Oh, there we are. I was going to say, I think you'll find it's starting to spread out down this climb over the 1,000 metres as the Mapei team are massing in strength at the front here. They have a lot of confidence in Vandenbroek, because along with probably Ballerini and Zanini, they are the top names on the squad in this particular race. No Museo, of course, but this isn't the sort of race Museo has excelled in the past. Sharp left-hand bend as they come away from the first climb. And a massive peloton has come up that climb too.
It's quite strange to see at this stage of Liege Bastogne Liege such a large group together. We're rejoining here Stuart O'Grady, and I wonder if he's off the front again or off the back at the moment, because a little bit of confusion. I think the rest of the group is probably still in front of O'Grady, but if the motorbike camera is here, he may well have recovered enough to catch them up and go off the front again.
Well, he's certainly on his own, that's for sure. As he now nips down through the trees. Good thing about this course is you can be quickly out of sight of any pursuers, because the nature of the course is it changes direction so much as it makes its way up back towards the finish of Ans.
Still the remnants of the chasing the lead group that went out very early on in the race this afternoon, and in the streets of Stavelot now they know that the main field has very rapidly closed down on them. There you can see just at the back of the group Kevin Livingston on the right-hand side there, Michael Anderson. But news coming to us that in fact the main field is less than 30 seconds behind.
And still Michael Anderson there finding the pace. I think Michael just cracked at that moment. in the cobbles as they're trying to readdress the situation. Borghese here at the back as well. For Mercatoni Uno. Kevin Livingstone.
Just in front of him, Alexander Scheffer, and a little bit further up, one or two of the other survivors. But the main field really have nailed back about a minute of the advantage that they had on these riders before. It was 1 minute 30 seconds just a few moments ago, and the last time check we had was it was well inside 30 seconds. And in fact, the main field is in the same town as the leaders.
Well, it's almost as if this group now is expecting somebody to come up here.
Well, Phil, this is strange, but this is Vandenbroek, I think, coming through the town of Stavelo here, so he must have shot away on the descent of Stocker, and in fact, he's riding himself right up to the back end of the leaders, so this is quite strange to see him so aggressive, so far out from the finish line, because there's still around about 50 miles to go before we get to the end.
Well, Vandenbroek, a little bit upset he didn't get the win in Flèche Wallonne when he produced such a great finish at the end. Only Bo Hamburger outwitted him. But now Vandenbroek has got a Festina rider come onto his back wheel there. And in fact, that Festina rider looks as though it's Christophe Moreau again, who was in the early action in Flèche Wallonne. This is how it happened, Paul.
Well, that's the attack. He obviously wasn't too happy by the fact that there was a very big group there and nobody was putting the pressure down to try and pull back those leaders. He knows how close we are to the Haute Levée, and the leaders now on the climb of Haute Levée. So I presume when we saw Stuart O'Grady back there, he was in fact trying to get himself back to the front of the race, because these are now the 5 leaders, the only remnants of that early breakaway. Jonathan Waters no longer in the group, but still Kevin Livingstone there on the right-hand side looking quite comfortable.
Now, if Vandenbroek can get up there, then it might change the situation. On now to the start of the Côte de la Haute Levée. Takes them up to 205 metres. It's quite a high one, this one. And this will leave them just about 50 miles to ride.
It's not one of the toughest climbs in Liege Bastogne Liege, but it's a very difficult one because of the length of the climb and the fact that once you get over the top, you have some very long straight roads. And what happens there is the wind comes across from the right-hand side and really does start to split the field up. There's a man we haven't seen for many years, Evgeny Berzin.
Well, we certainly haven't. The poor Evgeny's never been able to find the form, but now it looks as though he's going to try himself a little go here. Berzin on his team, La Française des Jeux now, which means that he probably won't be riding the Tour of Italy, which he's won in the past. And they're one of the few men to beat Miguel Indurain when Miguel was riding in his heyday. But Evgeny Berzin got a real working over when he briefly took the yellow jersey in the Tour de France a couple of years ago, and it looks as though Michael Anderson has been passed here as Berzin is still trying to keep the pressure down here and take this group right across to the leaders.
This is the move by Evgeny Berzin. In fact, it was 1994 when he won the Tour of Italy and beat Miguel Indurain, one of the first riders ever to beat Indurain in a time trial in one of the major tours. A big transfer this winter because he's moved across from his previous team to come and ride now for the Française des Jeux, a team which is managed by Marc Madiot, the former 2-time Paris-Roubaix winner. And I think Madiot has spent a lot of time talking to Berzin, trying to get his morale back and trying to get his excitement back for racing.
Well, there's no doubt that the former junior Russian world champion has got the talent, but he does seem to have been mentally affected these last couple of seasons. Anyway, he's trying to revitalise himself right now. It's an important day for Berzin, this. And although they've latched onto the back wheel of him on the Haute Levée, he's continuing to set the pace.
Well, he did pull back one or two riders there. I saw Michael Anderson coming back into the group, and I would think there probably aren't very many more riders in front if they've not all been swept up by the pressure that's being put on the front here by Evgeny Berzin. And I wonder really who he's trying to set the race up for at the moment, doing all of this work, because it's not the strongest Française des Jeux team really that they've fielded here, because Mauro Gianetti for the moment doesn't seem to be in such good shape.
So everybody putting themselves in a position here to reassess the breakaway. Berzin, who's on the far right of our picture, has done most of the damage today to bring everybody back together. Alberto Elli is the rider, I think, at the head of the field at the moment. And Alexander Scheffer, he's still, although he was in the breakaway, seems to have the legs to sit near the front of the bunch in that second place.
Well, Berzin did an awful lot of work there to pull this race completely back together. You get a chance there to see just how much damage was done by the climb of Haute Levée and Stocker, the two climbs which came very close together.
Well, that's a pack of around about 40 cyclists left in the lead group now, as we begin to show you what is left to, what we've done actually so far. Little yellow triangles are the climbs. You see they all come now after we've made the turn at Bastogne, and we're in the region of Trois Ponts where all the action was, then Stocco, and that's where we are now, where they've caught all of the leaders. There's still a few more climbs to come before we finally nip over the last couple of hills into the finish at Ans, which is just on the outskirts of Liège actually. It's a suburb of Liège, but it's a very short pedal back to the hotel anyway. There's the climbs that we've still to go up. Still a lot of them, isn't there? The finish is on the Côte d'Ans, which is a little tiny rise, but good enough to break up the sprint.
Most important one, I think, along the route that all of these riders are thinking about in the back of their minds is the Côte de la Redoute, which comes around about 35 kilometers from the end, and an ideal situation for anybody who really wants to split the race apart, because there it really is a difficult climb, very narrow indeed, and most of the crowd turns out to see the race. Udo Bolt's very aggressive, not happy with the fact that they're letting a man like Evgeny Berzin, because he is the kind of rider who realizes that even if Evgeny Berzin hasn't had the form over the last few years, you give a man like that just a little bit of a lead and it can go a long way.
Big Udo has been jumped on straight away. So much experience. Everybody around the world first recognised Udo when he won a stage of the Sun Tour in Australia after he turned pro in 1989. He had 3 wins in his first season. But since then he's become really a top bike rider, but we always think about him as being a super domestique. But he is a winner in his own right, Bolts.
Still a big split in the field there, because you can see there's just the yellow neutral service car behind this group, so that must indicate that the group behind that we saw earlier of around about 25 or 30 men must be catching this group, and if they all come together, that's going to, I think, then give the advantage to Berzin, because if the group swells to 50 or 60 riders, then nobody's going to want to chase at the moment, because we're still an awful long way from the finish.
And the back group is not far off the tail of this bunch now, and while they freewheel and mess about like this, Evgeny Berzin is going to open quite a big gap. Well, I wonder, are we about to witness a huge surprise here? Because it would be a surprise if Evgeny Berzin won this race. It wasn't a name we talked about at the start this morning. In fact, it was typical, it wasn't one of the pictures that was shown to us at the start by the camera team either. So clearly nobody expected Berzin to be featuring in this race today.
Let's not forget, though, he was the first Russian ever to win Liege Bastogne Liege.
Absolutely right.
Back in 1994, and that was the year that he really rose to prominence, because later on he took also victory in the Giro d'Italia. The Pulte boys on the front here have decided to try and organise the chase just a little bit. They're obviously thinking about Luc Leblanc, who a couple of days ago in Flèche Wallonne showed that he had very good form. They also have Axel Merckx riding as well, so they've got a couple of men there. In fact, this is the second group on the road, so they must be trying to pull Luc Leblanc back up to the main group. They got caught out, obviously, over the climb of Haute-Levée, which is why Axel Merckx is sitting there in 3rd position, and Luc Leblanc must be just a little bit further back. So they're the boys who've missed out.
And the Lotto boys also trying to give a helping hand here. There's still plenty of time to put matters to right. There's not a lot of gaps between the groups right now. There's nobody helping Pulte at all, but then sometimes it's best to let them get on with it. They know each other, get going in team time trial formation and close down the gap completely.
Certainly got caught out. Very strange to see experienced riders like that getting caught out in the region around Stocco and Haute-Levée, because everybody knows that's the first real critical part of Liege Bastogne Liege, because once you get to Stocco you have to hit the bottom in the first 20 positions, and all of this in fact is starting to be very good for Evgeny Berzin, because his advantage over that group is starting to increase.
Well, he's on the descent now through Rouy and heading towards the start of the climb of the Côte de Rossier. He's still about 8 kilometers away from that climb, but he's just settling in for what he thinks could be a long day in the lead here, doing just enough without ruining any of his big effort. He knows it's a long way to go, and he's waiting to see how this race develops.
It certainly is a very brave move, and I'm sure he doesn't really believe that he can go all the way to the finish, because Once he gets to the top of the Côte de Rosier, he has 69 kilometers remaining to the finish. But you can see a general regrouping happening at the back of the race here, because that group that was left behind on the Haute Levée is starting to integrate the front part of the main field, and that's going to make the number of riders there in that main field around about 60.
This is Berzine still out front and still getting the cheers of a crowd. I wonder if they realise this man was once the winner of Liege Bastogne Liege.
He's looking very comfortable. I think now he's decided nobody's going to come up to him right now, so all he can do is try and build up as big a lead as possible, because he's still facing a very long ride towards the finish in this small suburb of Liège called Ans. And in fact, he's still around about 68 kilometers to go before the finish.
And he's not making much progress, but he is in the lead. I think it was a Benesta rider that tried to get away. This is Bouvard still riding in second place. Everything we do this year, we seem to always talk of casino riders. This team has spent a lot of money building up a very strong lineup this winter, and the gap 22 seconds back to Bouvard.
Well, he's starting to get across. The last time check we had was around about 25 seconds to the main field, but Bouvard now riding across the gap towards the lone leader, the Russian Evgeny Berzine, and it's a good move, because if he can get up there, the two of them can work well together. But in the main field, race radio telling us that at the moment there's no reaction coming by any of the main top contenders.
It is clear to me, Paul, that they don't see Berzine, with no form for a while now, as a top contender. And he's gone early, so they're all saying he's probably a little bit mad as well. But you know, this rider gets the gap. They may not see him again today.
Looking very comfortable. You see, sitting on the top of the handlebars there, making sure that he keeps himself comfortable on the uphill sections of the course, so he can breathe nicely, keep everything working, the nicely oiled machinery as he goes there towards the summit of the Côte de Rosier. He'll get a chance now to drop down, and in about 10 kilometers time he'll go through the final feeding station of the race in the town of Laglaise at 63 kilometers left to go to the finish.
Now back to the main field. Still plenty of work being done. The Asics team now beginning to do quite a lot of work here. Copililio keeping the race closer together for the defending champion, Michele Bartoli. The other rider we saw flash through the screen there was Mirko Celestino from Polti. There's Alexander Scheffer. Pretty good climber, Scheffer. And rider number 31, well, that's our old friend Udo Boltz. And it was a Benesta rider that attacked, but I've got a feeling he might well be back in the field now. It could even have been this rider here. It looks a pretty big rider, that rider there, which is John Odriozola. That's another new name to conjure with.
Mikel Zarbaitia there for Once in about 4th or 5th position. And they're not really chasing the breakaway by Evgeny Berzine, because I think they've decided now to let the race settle down just a little bit, gather their forces, wait and see how many teammates they've got in the main field, and then somebody is going to have to take control of this race and try to organise some form of manoeuvre behind this attack by Evgeny Berzine, because if the two riders get together, Gilles Bouvard, who's chasing at the moment, then that is going to put a serious note on this breakaway.
And the squeaky motorbike there of our lead cameraman on Moto 1, should imagine, is beginning to annoy Evgeny, but still, a little bit of oil will cure the problem. But you see here, Paul, that there's nobody willing to chase. Otherwise, I think they would have caught Evgeny Berzine quite easily, because the gap he's opening is not hardly really newsworthy right now. But look at the speed of the bunch. They're completely slowed down here. Now, Evgeny Berzine, the next time check we get, is going to improve considerably over that field.
Well, if it was a group of 5 or 6 riders, there'd certainly be a lot more panic in the main field, but they still feel confident in the fact that they can let one rider go out on his own and organise a chase towards the latter part of this race and reel anybody in, even if his name is Evgeny Berzine, because in the closing stage of a race like this, once this man has been out so long on his own, he can still only ride at 25, 26 miles an hour. And an organised team can pick the pace up to 30 or 35 miles an hour, so he could have an advantage of 6 or 7 minutes in the last hour and still get nailed before the finish line.
Well, this isn't the time to tell him that, but anyway, he's still out in front. The riders here in conversation as well, waiting for somebody to put in the reaction that might cause the bringing back of Evgeny Berzin. The next sort of climb of any note really is going to be, we're going over the Lausset, but the one that they'll all try to split on is the terribly steep Narrated climb. And then from there onwards we go over the Côte d'Ornay. Narrated climb, by the way, happens by coincidence be the same name of the sponsors of the race today, the Narrated Mail Order Company. So I guess they would insist that that hill stayed in this event forever.
Interesting to note the position of Berzin here, getting down into that very low tucked time trialing position. Now I know the UCI, the International Cycling Governing Body, have banned the use of the clip-on bars. I wonder if they'll try and actually ban this position over the next couple of years, because they seem to be trying to ban everything else.
Well, he's got his own form here now. He's decided to adopt a grip on the brake cables instead. As Evgeny Berzin just gets on with his job today and hopes that these guys mess about for a little bit longer yet so he can get a bit further away. Over the top then of the Rossier.
Certainly good to see Berzin riding so well again, because he has been an enigmatic performer over the last few years. He's come to the Tour de France very often, regarded as one of the favourites, and every year since 1995 he's really disappointed when it came to the final 10 days of the Tour. He's always looked promising, and when it really comes to the crunch, something has happened to get in the way of him being a major contender for the overall victory.
He grabbed the yellow jersey in the Tour in 1996 after he won the time trial there, but he didn't hold on to it very long. He found himself a very lonely rider as one after another the riders attacked him until in the end he lost contact with the leaders and the maillot jaune was dropped. Berzin in many ways has always annoyed his professionals for one reason or another, and I think they often combine against him just to beat him, but today that isn't the case so far, at least.
Certainly isn't. A lot of the problems that he had actually came from his own team, because he was always arguing that the fact that they weren't looking after him correctly and weren't treating him as the sole leader that he should be. 13 kilometers now remain before the next climb of the day, the Côte de Lausset, situated at just 50 kilometers from the finish line in Ans, and that's around about 31 miles.
And it could still be Grady down there, keeping the pace nice and high. We could do with a time check right now. There's Eddy Merckx in the bottom corner of your picture, looking a little bit bemused. Oh, he's just spotted he's on television. The man that holds the record for Liege Bastogne Liege with 5 victories, and some of his victories were absolutely astounding. His victory years, by the way, were 1969, then 71, 72, 73. His last victory coming in 1975.
Eddy Merckx commentating for the French-speaking Belgian channel there, RTBF, and will be looking, I think, quite intently down this line here to see if he can recognise the shape of his own son Axel. And Eddie obviously very happy a few years ago when Axel Merckx came up to the finish line here in Ans in 7th position. A day for him when he really was proud that his son carried the name Merckx. And
I'm afraid we can't hear what Eddie is saying. He's on a different soundtrack to us, so we can't tell you, but at least you get a chance to see the man who, in my opinion, was the finest cyclist we ever saw in action.
And I have to say, for once, Phil, I totally agree with you.
Wow, that's a great change. Thanks, Paul.
Rolf Aldag in the middle there, and the pink jersey for Deutsches Telekom, just rolling along and keeping at the front as they go through the feeding station. Always a very dangerous part of the course here for these riders, because when men are switching left and right across the road trying to make sure they can pick up their bags, it is always a dangerous situation, and very often this is where many crashes do happen.
One man with his hand out and nobody's going to give him anything by the look of it. Seiko rider, here he comes.
Not too happy with the way that was taken on board, and looking back rather angrily at the soigneur to say, next time, please do it properly.
Now, this is one of the few of the single-day classic races where you'll see a Kelme jersey at near the front there, the green and white stripes. They fielded, in fact, a 6-man team at the start this morning. 5 Spaniards and a Colombian. And which one that is, well, your guess is as good as mine right now.
Well, at least the one thing we do know is the man leading the race is a Russian, and he's still starting to build up a very good lead indeed. He hasn't come up to the massive proportions that we would have expected. And the attack now coming from none other than Richard Virenque.
Well, it's good to see Veronquez needs a bit of form in those legs. He hasn't had much in the way of results this year. It's not unusual for Richard.
But he's always a great rider. He wants to get out and attack, especially when the television cameras are there. You know, you have to remember that magnificent attack he made towards the end of Milan-San Remo when he got out of the front there. And the Italian rider who joined him decided he wasn't going to work at all to the success of that breakaway. And Richard sat up on his bike just like a conductor at a great orchestra and started waving to the crowd saying, "What can I do? What can I do?" But he is a great showman, and it's good to see he's happy to take part in the aggressive nature of a race like this.
Nicolas Loda of the Valan team, just gone off our picture there. There he is.
Once again, Rolf Yerman from Casino getting up there. Well, there's confirmation. In fact, the time has moved out quite dramatically now. Bouvard 1 minute and 32 seconds behind the leader, Evgeny Berzin, and we're still waiting for confirmation of just how far behind the main field are. Berzin riding very sensibly, making sure that he doses his effort because he's got another around about 1 hour 20 minutes to go before the finish of this race here, so he doesn't want to push himself too far too soon because a lot of the major difficulties are really in the last hour of racing. And still no major team coming to the front in the main field here to take up the organisation to try and pull back the lead of Evgeny Berzin. They probably feel that by the fact that he went out so far from the front, he's just naturally going to weaken as we get closer to the finish.
A little bit more pressure going on the front now. The riders behind, I think, probably eased off going through the feed there. There's been an acceleration at the front, and now they're having a little bit of a problem getting back on. But there's definitely signs of a counter-attack now, so this could be where the race is beginning to go off in search of the Russian runaway. 5 riders here, Paul, trying to get clear, but they're all looking at each other again to come and do the work, and as a result we're going to have a general regrouping.
Well, certainly very strange tactics. I think everybody thinking now about the Côte de l'Orsay and then the very long descent down towards the town of Aiwal and the climb up the Côte de la Redoute, because that is certainly where you can make some major damage. Looks very much like Laurent Debian of Cofidis coming to the front here, a man who was much to the fore last week in Paris-Roubaix. Comes from not too far away from here in Roubaix, just across the border in France, and marked quite admirably by one of the Lotto riders. And I think that's André Perron from the Française des Jeux coming across there, just to make sure that Française des Jeux have some men in these little counterattacks that are starting to form behind their leader on the road, Evgeny Berzin.
But once again, as we've seen in all the classics this year, the chasing groups have been very, very tenacious indeed. People who have won the classics this year have had to work so hard to break the spirit of the men around them, and it looks like Liege Bastogne Liege is going to be no different. Here's the man who's escaping at the moment and keeping out of sight because he's not that far ahead and has not gained that much ground. Just over a minute's lead, in fact, for Evgeny Berzin. Got himself back in his little time trial mode because this young man really can ride a super time trial given the freedom of the road, and one or two of these may be beginning to realise it now that perhaps Berzin is refining some of that great form. Evgeny Berzin out of sight but not out of mind on this occasion. They're still holding him at just over a minute the advantage. We're just a few kilometres away now from the start of the next climb, which is the Côte de l'Orsay. And once we're under that bridge, Paul, I think we get onto the climb, don't we?
That's right. They flicked left underneath the bridge there, a little right-hander, and then he's straight onto the Côte de l'Orsay. Not a very difficult climb, but certainly one with 50 kilometres remaining once we get to the summit. And we're still getting a little bit of picture break-up. Don't adjust your set. It is because of the link-up from the motorbikes. These are live pictures we're looking at the moment. And reaction now coming from one of the riders from Psycho trying to get across.
Well, the Psycho rider looks like Eddie Mazzolini as he goes through our camera. Now, who's come up with him here? And it could be Andrea Brognara, but it doesn't matter anyway because they're all back in the pack. It's one of those days when they've allowed the Russian to get away. It took him 3 attempts before he finally got away, but everybody else who has a little dig, they're just bringing them back into the pack. No trouble at all right now, and it's still a very big field.
That's the area where the Côte de l'Orsay starts from. They go alongside the railway line there, and in a very short while they'll turn left underneath it, as Evgeny Berzin did just a few moments ago. But let's not forget, there's another rider out to the front of this main field, and we tend to forget about that. Gilles Bouvard And the last official time check we had was Bouvard was 1 minute and 30 seconds behind the leader, Evgeny Berzin. And I'm not sure what the time check back to the main field is, but it must be touching the 2-minute mark now.
That's what poor old Gilles Bouvard is riding very well indeed. We're not getting any sight of him at all just at the moment. So Bouvard has been caught. This is the steep slopes now of the Losse. These little hills abound in this region of the Ardennes, and you can spend a wonderful day on your bike touring them as well. There's the field, and they're saying now it's a clear 2 minutes 28 seconds. So Bouvard lost ground quite rapidly. They've swept him up, and now we're looking at a near 2.5 minute gap. Now, you said that Berzin needed 5, Paul. Well, he's halfway there.
He's certainly got half of that. And the thing is, there's still no team really making a concerted effort at the front. Michele Bartoli here coming up to have a word with his own teammate who's riding on the front there at the moment. That's Bettini. And I don't think he really wants him to do too much. Joined as well by David Tani. They're setting a little bit of a tempo there, but it's not fast enough really to start to eat into the advantage that Evgeny Berzin has over the rest of the field.
Well, if Bartoli is feeling okay, you'll certainly know now, or not, whether he is or not, rather, because he's the most consistent rider in the classics this year. And if he is feeling okay, then he's going to have to go to the team he's got left around him and say, it's time to get to work, boys, and bring back the leader.
Another Casino boy deciding it's his turn to try and get out of the front. This is Rolf Yeerman. So obviously, because of the fact that his own teammate Bouvard was caught, he's decided to launch out on the attack himself. It really is the tactic of the Casino team. Whenever there is nobody from that team in the front of the race, they launch out these little counter-attacks all of the time. But Once are not going to let anybody leap off the front quite like that, and they've sent a man up there too.
Well, this is the next tester now on the climb of the Losse. 6 riders putting themselves together, and they're starting with a disadvantage of nearly 2.5 minutes. Now we've got 7. And in fact, I think if the truth were known, we've got the whole field there. Here's now the team car of La Française des Jeux talking to... I suppose they're talking in French. I'm not sure whether Berzin speaks French. He certainly speaks Italian.
Haven't heard him speak French at all so far. His English is not quite all that brilliant either. And mostly he has been very conversant in the Italian language. But it's quite amazing how quickly a lot of these riders, once they change teams to a different country, do manage to pick up the language. And at the end of the day, it is very easy to communicate with riders in Italian, Spanish and French, because a lot of the cycling terms are very similar.
Still going up at 2:45 now. We're heading up towards 3 minutes. The field continuing to not exactly slumber, but certainly just keep a useful rather than great tempo on the climbs. Otherwise there wouldn't be so many of them left in this group. They're halfway up the Losse here.
Still, it's just 1s and 2s of all these teams coming to the front. Nobody really wants to put the hammer down. I think once we start to get a little bit closer to the Côte de la Redoute, we'll see at least one team start to become a little bit more dominant. Over the top of this climb, the Côte de l'Orsay, there's 15 kilometres before we get to the Côte de la Redoute, and that, I think, is when the race will really start to get serious.
And there's somebody else decided to put in a little bit of attack here, and it looks like it's US Postal rider. He starts to move away, and I'll tell you what, we've had 1 or 2 good boys from US Postal have a little dig. This is the Polish member, Dariusz Baranowski, who has won 1 or 2 good stage races in his time, but hasn't yet quite made it on the top international circuit in Europe at least. But he is a good bike rider, and he's decided he's going to have a little dig here now and see what can be done.
One of the riders that the organiser of the Tour de France, Jean-Marie Leblanc, feels could be a great classic rider of the future. Currently the Polish national champion, looking very comfortable here. A strange move by him because Evgeny Berzin has a very big advantage over the main field at the moment. 2 minutes 45 at the last time check. So the best way to pull him back really is to get an organised chase behind him.
And that's exactly what it isn't here, because they're climbing steadily. They're leaving a Lotto man on the front. And with every respect to Lotto, they don't produce the best climbers in the sport. And so there's a real indication here that the action is not yet coming. There's an interesting observer.
I would say definitely not a time for horseplay.
Indeed. Meanwhile, Evgeny Berzin thinking only of holding his speed steady and let the others come and go behind him. He slowly nudged his lead out towards that 3-minute mark, and he's still in the lead too, and the kilometres are ticking down.
They certainly are. Once they get to the top of this climb, the Côte de l'Orsay, they'll have just 50 kilometres remaining before the finish. And then I think the speed will start to pick up over the top of here, because we've got a 15-kilometre stretch taking us down to the Côte de la Redoute.
Well, certainly once we get to La Redoute, we'll know if Berzin is going to see Ans before everybody else, because that's the climb, and that is the one. If he's got a good lead over the top of that, then he will be in with a real chance. It's a brute of a climb, requires a low gear to get over it. And here's Baranowski now. Have they given him a chance? It's good to see a US postal rider in the camera lens this time around, because they're not having the best of starts of the season, unlike last year. But perhaps it's sometimes better you make a more sedentary start and then you come up and deliver the goods in the races that matter later, like the Tour de France, for example.
Certainly, Dariusz Baranowski last year was the overall winner of the Redlands road race, a big stage race over in California. And at the moment, no reaction still coming in the main field, but starting to get a lot more consistency of the ASICS CGA riders coming up to the front there, thinking about their man Michele Bartoli, because now is the time when Bartoli needs to come to the front just a little bit more. As you can see, looking over his shoulder there, Michele Coppolillo, to see the position of his leader in the main field, because one thing you don't want to do is put the pressure on at the front too much if you're in fact team leader is too far down the main field.
Well, these two boys from ASICS are riding under orders from Bartoli. There's no doubt about that. And I think the orders are just keep him at a respectful distance, but don't worry too much about it, because they are waiting for sure for La Redoute, I think. And once that comes, then they know that the strong men can get away from this field and settle down on the capture then of Berzin. He's just gone over the top, though, of the Côte de l'Orsay. And now his next stop will be the Côte de la Redoute, and that is a brute.
Certainly is. You can see just how difficult the climbs are starting to get now. There's almost 2,000 feet of climbing in Liege Bastogne Liege, and that is on such a repetitive nature, it really does start to break the legs when it comes down to the end. None of the climbs are really very long. They're only around about 3 or 4 kilometers in length, but it's just the repetitive nature, one after the other, that starts to break the legs of these men.
Well, Coppolillo has got him on himself on the front at the moment, and the ever-powerful Udo Boltz is just behind him. And Seiko have brought themselves a couple of riders up here now. That's Mazzol and Laine, Eddie Mazzolini, who we saw in that brief escape a few moments ago, and Salvadelli is the other man nearest the camera on the right at the moment.
Christophe Moreau, the Festina rider, also very close to the front all of the time here. They obviously feel that their man Laurent Dufaux has a very good chance today, because he rode excellently last week. André Schmeel, good to see him riding near the front, and on the far side Gianni Farazin, the Italian national champion, riding for Mapei. There's Frank van den Broek.
Sorry, you see the faces here. There's nobody really putting in any effort at all. This is just tempo climbing.
There's not too many people talking, though, as we look at the face of Laurent Dufaux. It's all very concentrated. Even the face of Mauro Gianetti there from the Française des Jeux. All of these riders now realizing in around about 10 or 12 kilometers, things are going to start getting very serious. The speed will start to go up. The organization will then come into the main field as everybody tries to place themselves in an ideal slot at 48 kilometers to go. And we realize then that the race certainly must be getting very hard.
Well, that's a nice round 30 miles to the finish. And remember that Berzin is probably 1.5 to 2 kilometers ahead of this bunch on the road. So the riders still do it well. Now here comes an attack, and they're going to come from the depth of the body, and it looks like it might be André Schmeel, is it? From the Lotto team, who's gone clear. Once have got his number, and the Once riders, well, is it Schmeel?
That is Schmeel, and I don't think he was very happy with a comment coming from one of the spectators at the side of the road there, because I've rarely seen a move like that. He obviously was gesticulating quite aggressively.
Well, it certainly appeared what it looked like. Marcelino Garcia is the rider from Once who's managed to grab his wheel. Well, this isn't the sort of race we expect to see Schmill doing too well in, but he's got the guts to give it a go. Now then. Well, he's given that well-known Belgian sign to a couple of spectators who must have said something, and let's hope the referees didn't see that, otherwise he'll probably find himself with a hefty fine by the end of the day.
Strange to see that, because after so many years as riding as different nationalities, in fact now Schmill is riding as a Belgian.
Anyway, he's safely replanted back in the bunch. This looks like Salvadelli, who's continuing the attack.
Certainly is, but the shape of Michele Bartoli's coming to the front an awful lot more now. He's looking for some kind of move or some kind of control over the front of this main field, and I think he was probably looking over his shoulder there to try and mass his troops. That is Yvon Madio in the red pullover there, driving the Française de Jeu team car. So obviously Mark has decided to have a day out after being at the head of driving the car last week in Paris-Roubaix. These are the performances of Evgeny Berzin in the last few attempts at Liege Bastogne Liege. 1st, 19th, 41st and 11th. So he's always been there and thereabouts when it comes to this great Ardennes Classic.
Well, he's coming in off the mountains again. Nice bit of soft road for him to ride on before he'll go back up to the hills once more. The main roads tend to cut through the valley here, and then once you make a left or a right turn, you find you climb across the contours. He's certainly getting the feel for this race now. That's what we've done. 217, 47.8 to go. Hatzé is the area where we are, and then we've got the village itself, then Évailles, and then onto the Côte de la Redoute. The Côte itself starts alongside the main Charleroi-Mons motorway, and then it swings up very steeply as it turns away from the actual freeway there.
Looking at the pedalling action here of Evgeny Berzin, he certainly doesn't look like a man under pressure. He's riding a very sensible race at the moment, controlling his effort all the time, just making sure that he never pushes himself that little bit too far into the red zone and keeping himself as comfortable as possible as he can, being in a lone breakaway. And these roads here that we're on at the moment, these very fast, flatter roads, are certainly to an advantage to the Russian rider, because he can get into his time trialing position and take advantage of the big power that he's got.
And with the roads, of course, completely closed, he's got the freedom of the roads, and you can see how he is using the apex of the corners, taking a lovely racing line straight through, just tightening his shoe straps there a little bit and stretching his legs. So he's probably a little bit uncomfortable then. This will be the longest break he's been in for a couple of years.
Certainly will. It's the most we've seen him on television, definitely, in the last couple of years. But it's good to see him back, because he has been a very good performer in the last few years. 1994 when he won the Tour of Italy, but since then really looking to find some kind of consistency in his performances. And just taking on board here a drink known as Extran, which is a very high energy drink that a lot of these riders use. It's basically one packet of that drink is equivalent to 6 slices of bread.
Well, right, so he's not going to get hungry for the rest of the ride. Well, let's see what effect it has on him now. Here's the town itself as Hatzé. Baranowski still out there at 225. The bunch are going nowhere at the moment at 250. And neither is Baranowski, I'd have to say, because he's just less than half a minute over the field. They're going to see him on these roads.
Certainly, unless you've really got big power, it's not worth trying to jump across a gap to a rider like Evgeny Berzin, especially when it's around about the 2.5 minute mark. So Baranowski really, once he'd found that he hadn't got 4 or 5 riders going with him, he should maybe have waited for the main field to try and renew his attack just a little bit later on.
Well, it will probably make more sense, but the fact is that once you get out front, you have the television cameras on you, you've got the crowd shouting your name. It's not so easy sometimes to sit up and wait for the pack. Now the bunch themselves are in the same village now, or the same town, that the 2 leaders have passed through already. Still just keeping, as they feel, control of this escape rather than hunt it down, because with the climb of La Redoute and then nearer the end 2 more climbs, I think they'll feel pretty confident they've got this race under control. Exactly who, we're not too sure yet, because there's still a number of riders who would be listed as favourites to win this race from this group.
One of those would be Laurent Jalabert, who today really seems to have calmed down his ardours just a little bit. A few years ago, in fact, he had tried to attack on the Côte de Haute-Levée, where Evgeny Berzin went away a little earlier this afternoon, and he really had over-assumed on his strengths. He'd won the Flèche Wallonne just a couple of days early in a really dominant style, and I think he felt that he was invincible, and he attacked several times on the run-in towards Liège, and in fact ended up that he'd pushed himself just a little bit far from the finish and ended up really just blowing up completely.
Well, the Asics team are feeling pretty confident that Bartley will do it for them because they're the ones keeping this in control. Now, at the moment, we've just seen Baranowski passed there by Nicola Loda. Pretty good sprinter is Loda, but today he's decided to go and have a little dig out front himself for the Balland team. He's showing good form at the moment, Nicola. And he went straight past Baranowski there. Baranowski, I don't think, took up his wheel. Well, we've got Berzin still out in the country, approaching a 3-minute advantage. Looking now as sharp as he did when he rode to victory in the time trial in the Giro d'Italia 4 years ago almost now.
An interesting move now. The Deutsches Telekom team coming to the front to start to organise their chase just a little bit. They maybe feel that Udo Bolz has a chance of doing something this afternoon, but also starting a little bit of organisation. There are 5 riders from Asics in the top 10 positions there, so shortly they will be coming to the front and I think taking over the reins of the chase behind. Baranowski did recover enough just to get onto the back wheel of Loda, so things now starting to look a little bit more serious. The time gap still going up, 2:35 to the two chasers and 2:55 to the main field, so Evgeny Berzin starting to get towards the amount of time that I think he needs if he's going to have a chance of winning this event this afternoon.
4 more climbs remain, plus the little climb up to the finishing line itself, which should Berzin still be clear by then, he won't worry too much about. The Rabobank boys in orange and white also passing the food around amongst themselves, because Michael Bogart there, very much a Rabobank rider, but wearing the colours of red, white and blue, the champion of the Netherlands. As we see now, Berzin scorch around that right-hander. He's got the whole road open to himself at the moment. This will be in the town of Évailly now, as we head towards the La Redoute. Only 4 kilometres away, we'll soon be in the other town of Romochon. And once you're through and over the cobblestones there, you know you're in trouble, or not, depends how good you feel.
But Berzin looks very good at the moment. Every time he gets onto a safe, straight piece of road, he gets his arms and forearms over the top of those handlebars to get himself into a good, long, aerodynamic position. This young man, not only did he win the Tour of Italy in 1994, but he also won the white jersey as the best young rider as well, and wore the pink jersey for 19 days.
Just 43 kilometres left, so about 26.5 miles. And I think all of a sudden, with the proximity of La Redoute, there is now a new urgency in the chase. So we're now making our way towards the start of the climb of the La Redoute. It's really a back entry approach, this. You sometimes feel that you've been sent off course as you go down the narrow road through Remuchon. Then all of a sudden you go under a road bridge and you're on this concrete climb, which gradually gets narrower and much, much more steeper.
Berzin now starting to get out of the saddle. The race so far this afternoon has been very fast indeed. The average speed up around about 39.5 kilometres an hour, almost 25 miles an hour for a race over this kind of terrain. So once we start to go over the last few climbs, it's going to make 1 or 2 sore legs.
Well, we've never had a Liege Bastogne Liege in excess of 40 kilometres an hour, so it could be we're on a record ride today. Still about the same, 2 minutes 55 seconds the gap back to the main field, with a couple of guys in between, but it's they're not in the between now because they're right on the front of the bunch. They've just been swept up, so they've got everybody except Berzin, and they're making ready now for the ascent of La Redoute. Enormous crowd as always on the top of this climb, because it is really a difficult climb. There's the contour, 19%, which is albeit 1 in 5, and it only goes up to the 160 metres, but virtually from sea level, and it does that in just 1.6 kilometres.
You can see the urgency at the front there. One or two riders suffering at the back because of the speed that's been set by the ASICS team at the front. A lot of the top leaders now moving to the front of this pack, and I did in fact catch sight of Luc Leblanc there riding for the Polti squad, looking very aggressive, trying to keep himself up in the top 5 or 6 positions.
This is the start.
Ideal position for Evgeny Berzin because he doesn't have to fight his way to the bottom of the climb. All he has to do is negotiate those 1 or 2 little corners, and he can ride it now at his own tempo. But it will be interesting to see just how much time he's going to lose, because he will certainly ride this climb a lot slower than the main field behind, because they'll be attacking and trying to break up that main peloton. So he could lose between 30 seconds and a minute on a climb like this.
On the right of the picture there, the main freeway, which doesn't allow parking, and the cars all stopping to watch the race go by. That's the main road from Brussels down through to Charleroi and Mons. And now Evgeny Berzin on this very nice stretch of road, which doesn't look that steep at the moment, but it hurts. But it gets even worse as he starts to move up towards the summit, because the actual finish now is a way over to our left.
He's still looking very comfortable. There's no urgency at all in his pedaling style. There's no rolling of the upper part of his body, indicating a certain amount of fatigue starting to creep in. And coming to the bottom of the climb, the main field now led by, I think, Stefano Zanini from the Mapei squad, but a lot of riders from ASICS CGA up there as well.
Now look at the crowd here. They put barriers up here this year to keep them all back, but they're pretty orderly. And they're cheering Evgeny Berzin on the climb. But now the determination of the big peloton. We shouldn't see a huge bunch at the top of this one. There's Berzin as the road gets narrower and steeper. And now if we could just see the whole picture here, because I think that the main field is beginning to split up. They've got a teammate on the front for Mapei. Paul thinks it's Zanini trying to rip them apart here. Vandenbroek is not too far off the pace. He's in 5th place. And I'm quite sure that Bartley is going to be up there. Oh, and they're just about squeezed through there. And look at this crowd. This is the piece that hurts just here now. And little Evgeny Berzin is going superbly well. They're going to have to hunt him down, because I don't think he's going to come back to them right now.
So now the work being done by ASICS on the front. Paolo Bettini making sure that he keeps the speed as high as possible. In 2nd position, his own teammate Michele Bartoli. Frank Vandenbroek in the white jersey there, moving forward as well. Good to see on the left-hand side, Laurent Dufaux.
Well, there's 3 big names to conjure with now at a crucial stage of Liege Bastogne Liege. The one man we haven't seen, Paul, is Laurent Jalabert.
That's interesting, because Jalabert knows this part of Liege Bastogne Liege very well indeed. We haven't even seen very much of his team that he used to great effect the other day in Flèche Wallonne, but for the moment they've not been very close to the front at all. Berzin now on a slightly easier part of the climb here, getting a chance to recover, but we've still got a little bit more to go to the summit.
Well, this is turning out now to be a storming race here as Bettini tries to take Bartoli into the lead. He's doing his best here. Vandenbroek is in very close proximity. 2:20, the gap has come down. They haven't pulled back that much.
They haven't pulled back that much, but he's already lost 20 seconds on the first part of this climb here. One of the riders from Casino moving up there. I think that's Rodolfo Massi. And there, finally, the yellow jersey of Laurent Jalabert coming into the picture.
And Jalabert playing a watching rather than a dictatorial role now in Liege Bastogne Liege. Not a teammate in sight around him. And Bartoli has called up the troops. Bartoli, the winner of this race last year.
Looking very comfortable there, looking around just to see what the faces of the other riders in this group are showing. Another steep part of the climb, nearly the summit for Evgeny Berzin, but now Bartoli takes over the pace setting all on his own.
And just look at the way he's dancing on those pedals. Looks a little bit like Laurent Jalabert when he's climbing at the moment. They are just about a kilometre behind the leader on the road, because if they pass the kilometre board, Berzin has gone over the summit. Bartoli is now trying to pull a group clear here. This will be the big effort. Vandenbroek is hanging on in there too. Steepest part of the climb just about now. Way in the distance you can see the freeway that was on the shoulder not very long ago.
It's good to see Frank Vandenbroek up there, still managing to match the moves of Michele Bartoli. A lot of question marks over his chance to ride the 265-kilometre race here at Liege Bastogne Liege, because after all, he's still only 23 years of age.
But what a season he is having. Paris-Nice, Ghent-Wevelgem on his belt, 2nd in Flèche Wallonne. Now he's 3rd over the top of the climb. And Michael Bogart is also alongside. Jalabert has moved smoothly back into the frame.
I think I caught a glimpse there as well of Francesco Casagrande riding for the Cofidis team. So a serious little group starting to move to the front here, but the strongest man at the moment is certainly Michele Bartoli. Always still got the ability to look over his shoulder and see what sort of damage his attack is doing.
Well, he's obviously had the miracle cure for bronchitis, because he wouldn't get up La Redoute with a bad chest today, I can assure you of that, as he stomps up towards the summit now.
Well, Jaja's played a very clever game. We haven't seen very much of him for the whole day now, and he's moved up to the front at the right time, just as they come to the Côte de la Redoute. This is the sign of a very experienced professional. He's marked all of the moves, and now he's going clear with Michele Bartoli.
Well, he's been isolated from his team, and he's had to use his head rather than his legs, I think, because a lot of riders will think he hasn't got the great form because he didn't show it in Flèche Wallonne. In fact, he showed the opposite. So with no team around him now, he's going to have to work something out. Now, he's taking a good look at Bartoli, and I wonder if he said anything to say, look, we've got the gap, let's try and go together. There's Bogaert trying to get across.
Just in front of him, Francesco Casagrande, and having a lot of difficulty, Frank van den Broek.
So we've got still Berzin, remember, out front. And then we've got these guys trying to pull them back. And this is Casagrande who is joining from the Cofidis team.
He's actually starting to perform pretty well this year. They actually brought him into Cofidis towards the end of last season to try and bolster their chances of doing a good ride in the Tour de France. But Bartoli's gone again. He's no holding him.
Well, I think Jalabert forgot to mention that bit to him, because he obviously wasn't ready for it. And Bartoli has gone off by himself. This man just loves Liege Bastogne Liege. This is his classic. And now he's launched another big attack. Here's how he did it. Jalabert thought, I can't go. He's looked over his shoulder. Casagrande's come round Jalabert. But really, I don't think Francesco had the legs just then, because he just crossed the gap from the main field up to the lead group. So Michael Bogaert, who was so much in the action in Flèche Wallonne, is now having to do some of the work here in Liège.
Well, that was a fine piece of attacking riding there. I think he just wants to make sure that once we get over the top of this climb, the group can reform and have a certain advantage over what was the rest of the main field, which is why he leapt out of the front there. He doesn't certainly feel that he can ride all the way up to Evgeny Berzin on his own at the moment. Just tucked on the back there is Francesco Casagrande. And Frank van den Broek has recovered, and he is there now in third position on the road in the white jersey.
So we now have 5 riders down there, with Jalabert hanging on to the back. And the Casino rider in the red shorts will be Rodolfo Massi. Here's that attack in close-up. The jaw set on Michele Bartoli. As the sun's not shining, he can't see at all where he's going, so he's just going to keep on just trying as best he can. Van den Broek had the perfect spot on his wheel here earlier on the climb, but obviously must have faded. He must have been taken right to his limits there.
Another man just got onto the back here, number 23, Laurent Dufaux. So now 6 men chasing Michele Bartoli, and a little bit further up the road, Evgeny Berzin.
And there's Bogaert. Having a great season, Michael Bogaert at the moment. 7 riders now, there they are. Well, 6 of them anyway. The one we're missing, of course, is Bartoli. He's up front now.
Van den Broek, Dufaux, Jalabert, Bogaert, Massi and Casagrande. A lot of big names there. Jalabert riding sensibly, making everybody do their turn at the front here as he drops down into 6th position and forces Laurent Dufaux to close the gap.
Yes, at the moment, it's not the old Laurent Jalabert. He'd be driving this break now. In fact, he would have tried to have gone with Bartoli. There is Jalabert, but even half of Laurent Jalabert can still get in the decisive moves in the big events. Bogaert comes to the back, and so too does Bartoli. So they've got him back, leaving just 1 man out in front, but my goodness me, this is now a very select chasing group.
Certainly is. We're over the top now of the Côte de la Redoute, a flat section of road before they turn onto the main road, which takes them heading up back towards Liège. Unfortunately for them, though, they're going to turn off that big main road and head off a very difficult climb called the Côte de Sartillemont, which was put into Liege Bastogne Liege just 3 years ago to try and toughen up the run into the finish. And then this year they put another new climb in as well, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, and that is going to be a turning point, I think, of Liege Bastogne Liege this afternoon, because once Evgeny Berzin gets there, I think his legs are going to start to rebel against all of the work he's been doing so far.
But it's going to take some strength from the fact he's come over La Redoute. He's lost some of his lead, but not all of it. The only problem for him is the fact that there's now a select chasing group after him, and so they're going to get down to business. But with so many big names in that chase group, there's always the chance they will want to take the other up to the leader, and there could be still a little bit of tactics to play here.
Certainly the speed that those riders have come round there now makes me think that the time gap has plunged once again down to around about the 30-second mark, so they are starting to eat into the advantage of Evgeny Berzin, but still they haven't done it as quickly as I thought they would, because after all he did attack almost 80 kilometers from the finish, 50 miles, and he still has a good lead, 54 seconds, but I can't believe, looking at them going over that bridge there, that it's as big as that.
Well, I don't know, because you see Jalibert's dropped off, and I think it's the old story here. There's a lot of heads here, and they know if they close the gap to Berzin, then it's going to produce another situation, and which one will have the strength to go clear. And so neither one of these top riders want to close this gap down for the other. Now, there's Casagrande, a man we must not discount here. Really showed his true colours with a great Tour de France last year, and now in at the kill, very much so here. And this man taking full advantage of the tactics behind him, and he's hanging on to a lead of barely a minute as Bartoli now tries to get some life into this group. And look how Jalabert watches Michele Bartoli everywhere he goes. We could be treated here, you know, to a similar situation of 1 year ago in this event.
You certainly could. Jalabert very attentive there, knowing that Michele Bartoli has looked very good over these last couple of climbs, and as soon as anybody looks as if they're going to steal 1 or 2 lengths clear over the group, everyone is closing it down. Laurent Dufaux riding remarkably well in this group, not regarded as a one-day rider, but today in with the best of them in this Liege Bastogne Liege. Michael Bogaert, certainly a revelation in the classics this year, riding very proudly with the Dutch national champions jersey on his shoulder. And it's good to see Frank van den Broek riding well over this distance, because at 23 years of age, this must certainly be the longest race that he's actually taken part in, because normally a lot of his wins have been around the 200-kilometre mark.
Well, Casagrande concentrating, riding past Frank. Laurent Dufaux, always a dark horse. You can see the way he sits on his bike. This man's a wonderful climber. And Rodolfo Massi here, he's the big surprise in the breakaway, but Casino are on a high this year, coming straight off the victory now of Bo Hamburger in Flèche Wallonne. It's really a difficult situation now to pick a winner from this group if they catch up with the leader. And we're now just on 10 miles from the finish.
10 miles to go. Once they get to the top of this climb, they'll have 13.5 kilometres to go to the finish, and about 5 kilometres of those are downhill. But Rodolfo Massi's had a pretty good season so far this year. In fact, he gave Casino one of their great early season victories by winning the overall standings of the Tour of the Mediterranean, following that with a good win in the Tour of Calabria in Italy.
So all of them, it seems, are on form here, but they're having a real problem working out how Evgeny Berzin is going to come back towards them. He's still got 10 miles to go. It must seem an awful long way. He's about 13 kilometres actually from the finish at the moment.
He's still not showing any signs of weakness. Every time the race has gone up onto one of these climbs here, he's got into a very good climbing position, kept his tempo nice and comfortable, although the shoulder's starting to rock just a little bit now. This climb, in fact, has 2 very steep corners in it, and those are the places where it's going to really show on the face of Evgeny Berzin as he tries to make sure that he can conserve as much of this advantage that he's built up as possible. At one stage, he was almost 3 minutes ahead of the rest, and Michele Bartoli has decided to go.
And Bartoli is waiting no longer. He's making a determined move now, and for once he's got rid of Jalabert. Now, we never caught up with that quick enough, really. We don't know where Jalabert was situated when he attacked, but certainly Bartoli has now decided this is the chance. He's left himself a chance of bridging a gap of around about 50 seconds, and he's still got the climb to come of the Saint Nicolas, and that's presuming he gets away, because we don't know where the others are right now. But Michele Bartoli looking over his shoulder to see, is there any show of defiance coming from men like Laurent Jalabert? Look at that gap. That's a tremendous effort by Bartoli.
Well, that's remarkable. I didn't think he was going to go straight out of the front like that. I thought this was just a little sortie to see what kind of damage he could do by putting in an attack. He's been followed very closely recently by Laurent Jalabert, and he attacked here from 4th position. In fact, Laurent Jalabert had started the move by opening up a slight gap over the rest. Bartoli looked to see how weak they were, and he went straight away, came up to Jalabert and right by him.
And Bogaert did try to go with him, but didn't have the legs. And Bartoli has decided now that he's going to go clear. And this is Rodolfo Massi here at the moment, trying to shake them out as well. This is an amazing race now. As you see, they refused to go and catch Berzin as a group, and now they're trying to do it as individuals.
Well, I don't think anybody would have expected the attack to come here. Obviously, Michele Bartoli had pre-planned this, because I thought all of these riders would have waited just a little bit longer down to the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, the penultimate climb of the race, because every one of these riders this morning told me just how difficult they felt that this climb was. And this is a good move by him, because he really has surprised them.
Well, Michele Bartoli here, who won this race last year, is not going to relinquish that number one as early as unless he has to. But he's still got to cross the gap to Evgeny Berzin, who is pedalling on as best he can and hopes he can hang on. But look at this, the gap has closed amazingly quickly. 54 seconds it was on the climb here now of the Sartre-Tillemont. This man has just gone across the gap as easy as you like, and now in fact Evgeny Berzin knows he's coming.
He certainly does, and I think Berzin can only hope for one thing, that he can recuperate just a little bit, and then once Bartoli comes up to him, he can get onto his slipstream, because we're only around about 1 kilometre from the summit of the climb. Then there's a very long, fast descent down into Liège, and then they will face the penultimate climb there of Saint-Nicolas. And there in the sights now of Bartoli are Evgeny Berzin, and it's absolute panic, I think, in the group behind, because they never expected Bartoli to attack so soon.
Massi, Casagrande and Jalabert are the three riders we're looking at here. But now I think it's showing to us that Jalabert isn't the man this year. He wouldn't have let Bartoli slip his clutch there. And now here comes Bartoli, right up behind the rider we haven't seen for an awful long way today, Berzin. And Berzin continues at the same speed, and Bartoli's going to jump him straight away, I think. He's going to run on him and hit him, and see, he took a good look at Berzin. I think the answer was in Berzin's face. He hasn't got the legs, and now the defending champion is free to win again. What a great piece of riding this is. This man has done it all on one climb. They have chased and chased and chased, and he waited, and he's just destroyed them.
In fact, Evgeny Berzin just could not move at all there. The man that we're looking at now, Michele Bartoli, came up to him, and the plan was to attack straight away in case there was any reaction from the Russian rider. But in fact, Berzin never even got out of the saddle. I think he knew that he was now a spent force, and all he can hope is to try and survive just a little bit longer and get picked up by that group before he reaches the summit of the climb where Michele Bartoli is now, and then he can recuperate on the downhill stretch down into Liège.
Well, it's 13.5 kilometres to home now for Michele Bartoli. He'll get the last climb with 5 kilometres to go. And poor old Evgeny Berzin now not looking so good at all. And it's not going to be long before he's picked up by these riders here. Vandenbroek and Bogart. And then Massi, followed by Casagrande just behind Dufault. And on the end there, we've got Jalabert. So those 6 are recovering. And they're going to jump on Berzin. I don't think they've caught him yet, but they're going to come up on him pretty soon. Bartoli, though, has already gone seconds in front.
Well, in fact, Evgeny Berzin was pretty unlucky there, because he was only about 500 metres short of the top of the climb there. And if he could have just got up to that point, he would still have had a chance of staying in the slipstream of Michele Bartoli. But I think a certain amount of chaos coming into this group now. There's the confirmation of the position. Berzin just 5 seconds behind the leading rider, Michele Bartoli, and 20 seconds already back to the risk group now, which is just 6 riders.
Well, last year Bartoli had to go out and catch Alex Zula and Laurent Jalabert before going on to victory. Today he only had to go out and catch Berzin, which he's done, and I don't think we'll see him again now, or at least they won't, until we get to the finish. This is how it happened. Jalabert saw him coming, but there was no way he could answer that. And Jalabert tried, but he wasn't gaining, and then no doubt sat up to see if anybody else was going to give him a hand, and the answer was, in fact, Bartoli had hit them just when they were hurting most. That was a great piece of riding. Now he's just 12.5 kilometres from the finish.
12 kilometres to go before he rides up the finishing straight here in Ans-en-Till. And about 4 kilometres of those are uphill. In a very short while, he'll be coming down to the bottom of the climb, which will be the Côte de Saint-Tillemont, the Saint-Nicolas, and then right the way up to the finish. Berzin telling us, sorry guys, I'm finished for the day. I've put in my effort. I tried, but this time it didn't work. But a great performance by him this afternoon, and it's great to see him back riding at the top of professional cycling.
Well, the first time that Michele Bartley won anything like resembling a classic was the Flesch Brabançon in Belgium back in 1994, but then he popped up with the big one, the Tour of Flanders, in 1996. But last year and this year, his consistency in the classics has been amazing. Let me just give you his position finishes in the World Cup events last year. 5th in Milan-San Remo, he won Liege Bastogne Liege. 7th in the Tour of Flanders, 4th in the Flesch Wallonne, 6th in the Amstel Gold Race, 4th in the Tour of Lombardy, and not surprisingly with that lot, he won the World Cup as well. And he also had a nice 10th place finish in the World Championship. This year he's had 6th in the Tour of Flanders and 5th in the Flesch Wallonne. I don't think anybody will bet against him now not winning Liege Bastogne Liege for a second successive year.
Another point of interest, in fact, he turned professional the very same day as Lance Armstrong, and his first professional event was the same as the American riders as well, the Grand Prix of San Sebastian, just after the Olympic Games of Barcelona in 1992. And look at the speed there, 90 kilometers an hour, which is very close to 55 miles an hour.
And he's having to hold his bike on the road here, it looks like now, but he's going to just let the bike do the work until he gets down this hill. I don't think he can have much choice because he can't pedal much quicker as he goes down now towards the last climb of the day at Saint Nicolas. We're in the suburbs now of Liège, but it's still a little way to the finish.
Team manager coming alongside there, Sergio Passania, himself a former winner of a stage in the Tour de France, and there's the time gaps. Berzin still hasn't been picked up, 25 seconds behind Michele Bartley and 35 seconds to the group of 6.
It's only 10 seconds lead for Berzin over the pack. It's a shame because he certainly would have been well-deserved of that second place today, and he might still get it. But here are the chasers. There's 6 of them here. And any second now. In fact, that looks like Berzin at the back, so he may just have been passed there, Paul.
Yes, I think he's just been picked up there. That's Berzin in 7th position. Now all he can hope is to survive. He wants to stay with this group just a little bit longer because I don't think he'll be able to accompany them over the final climb here of the Côte de Saint Nicolas. And what he will do is hope that he can hang on to get himself a top 10 position. But he really has put in the master performance this afternoon. 70 kilometres at the head of the race after attacking 80 kilometres from the finish over the summit of the Haute Levée.
These riders still working together, but you can somehow tell by the way they're racing, Paul, they are not expecting to see Bartley again.
Well, the big problem that all of these riders have is most of them over the last couple of days have been staying in the area around Liège, and they've actually been out and looked at this climb of Saint Nicolas, so they know what's waiting for them, and every one of them, I think, is hoping that they will have a chance, have a little bit more energy to try and attack on the Côte de Saint Nicolas, and if they've got the super force in their legs, that then they could bridge the gap to this man Michele Bartley. But the way he's riding at the moment, I don't think anybody's going to see him again as he rides into this little part of town here where the Italians have actually put out all of the flags, because a lot of Italian expatriate workers actually have come here to live in the area around Liège and work here, so they'll be happy to see Michele Bartley with a 46-second advantage over the chasing group.
Well, the welcome sight is he's nudged out another 6 seconds, and at this stage of the race they're even telling him the wrong time actually. 40 seconds, he's improved to 46 according to our watches, and that I think is the best news he will have heard. But they're not going to close this sort of a gap now in the few kilometres that remain, and they're going to have to start thinking of second place here. Jalabert, by the way, was the rider who got second last year behind Michele Bartley.
Berzin still keeping himself happily in the back of that group there, making himself get a little bit closer to the finish with each pedal stroke. On the front, Frank van den Broek looking very nervous now. This is the start of the climb. It really is a tough one, 1.2 kilometres long. The steepest part at the bottom is 12% and it climbs to 120 metres. But the crowd certainly have come out here, and there'll be a lot of Italian voices here cheering him on.
And there's the Italian flags out of all the windows here, so he's giving the crowd an awful lot to cheer on. He's a pretty popular rider, Bartley, and a man with a great future, and I don't think we've seen the best of him yet, although he's certainly got a few big wins under his belt now. The chase group continues to work as one unit, but indeed the man they want is gone this time, and gone for good, I think. It looks as though, in fact, down there, poor old Berzin is opening the door and causing a bit of grief amongst the rest of that breakaway.
Chance here to see just how tough that climb is. Still on the big chainring though, Michele Bartley, reaction behind coming from the man who said he was going to win Liege Bastogne Liege, Frank van den Broek.
Well, Van den Broek is going off in search here. He's powering up this climb, and Jalabert is trying to get on terms with him now, but this is a big effort by Frank Van den Broek. Second in the Flèche Wallonne. He's got no chance now of winning, but second in Liege Bastogne Liege wouldn't be bad. In fact, with 2 second place in the Tour de France last year, he's getting a bit of a specialist at that. He doesn't want to stay around Frédéric Moncassin too much. Anyway, Van den Broek on the climb now. He knows that Jalabert is coming, and Jalabert, this man mystifies me, Paul. He seemed to be in trouble, yet he's got that competitive instinct where he's got to be at the head of the action.
He certainly does. He's a real fighter, a magnificent bike rider from the south of France, and Mazamet is the town that he lives in, the Tarn region, but he is really, to me, very much a Sean Kelly style of rider. It doesn't matter if he's not going to win the race, he still wants to give everything that he's got in his body to make sure that he puts in a maximum performance. On the upper slopes of the climb here, Michele Bartoli still in the drop positions there, still on the big chainring, which is quite remarkable, because I have to tell you, I actually drove this climb and it really is steep. Now Van den Broek looking a little bit in difficulty.
He is, but you're right about this climb. Had this group come here together, it would have been a cracking performance by anybody to get away. It's a very steep hill, this one. And Jalabert, he's on the inside ring, continuing here to keep a very good rhythm, and he's feeling he may have cracked young Frankie Van den Broek. There is Laurens Jalabert's LBL performance, his second last year, 4th in 95. But this is one of the classics which still eludes him, and I'm afraid he can tick this one off as well. Because even if he gets second, he's not going to catch this rider now. He's powering up towards the summit of the Saint-Nicolas, and then he knows he's just 3 miles from the finish, and a lot of that is downhill.
Certainly is, but he's still got to get himself over the top of the climb here. There's the banner over the top showing him that he has reached the summit of this climb, and Sergio Passani, the team manager there, must start to feel a little bit more confident now after that attack of his young man Michele Bartoli when we came over the top of the Côte de Sartillemont, and a very sensible place to attack really, because nobody was waiting for it.
And those that were couldn't do a thing about it. Bogart leading the 4 remnants here. In front we've got Van den Broek, and we've also got obviously Jalabert, who now looks to be causing a repeat of the top 2 places last year. And I think Berzim is still hanging on the tail of that group. He's done quite a ride.
Well, Laurens Jalabert still trying to stay clear over the top of the climb now, very comfortably indeed, picking up his pace. And the organisers very nicely put in a nice stretch of cobbles just to make the riders feel at home and remind them that in fact they are still in Belgium.
Well, there he is. Now he can settle in over the cobblestones. A little taste of Paris-Roubaix. As Bartoli now starts to take a few deep breaths and gather himself for the finish. There's the angle of the ascension for Laurens Jalabert, who's kept his rhythm well up here, keeps checking back to see if Van den Broek has had one of those miraculous resurgence of energy, but I don't think he has.
In fact, that's Van den Broek there going off the back of the group of chasers there, led over the top by Rodolfo Massi, Bogert and Casagrande. So Van den Broek has been picked up and dropped by this group of riders now. So obviously the extra hour and a half racing in a 265-kilometre event has paid on this young man, who is still only 23 years of age, but he'll come back, I think, in the future to ride and possibly win Liege Bastogne Liege.
Well, maybe he hasn't got the legs because of youth, but his instinct is always there. He made the effort, he's paid the price, but he'll always know he made the effort and it didn't work. It's better to go out that way, I think, than not make the effort and never know the answer to the question. But this man has made the effort, and it has worked for the 2nd year in succession. He's just tipping down a little bit now. He can watch his speedometer go up that little bit more. Here's Rodolfo Massi. Now, is he going to reach Jalabert? Because there's Jalabert up there, and Massi is closing the gap. This man and the Casino team are really on an inspired season.
Well, they certainly are. I don't think Jalabert is going to be very used to this at all. Normally, when he attacks at the end of a race, nobody comes back. We saw it just a few days ago in Flèche Wallonne, that he attacked several times on the run into the finish, and every time somebody was able to pull him back. I think when he left everybody else there behind on the climb of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, he thought, well, this is it. I can ride myself to a very easy 2nd place. And the speed that Rodolfo Massi came up to him there is going to cause him some thoughts.
Well, he's hit him straight away, but Jalabert was having none of it. He may have seen him coming and eased back just enough. Anybody else coming? No, as far as he can see. Massi certainly seems to me as though he could move his saddle up a little bit. He looks as though he's pedaling with his kneecaps, but anyway, he's still doing it to great effect. And this rider now is running out of time. He's heading into the finish of Liege Bastogne Liege. He'll shortly be on the final short climb up to the line. In fact, he may well have just started it here.
He's just about to reach the start of the climb here, up to Ans, 2.7 kilometers left to go. And I would say, in the words of Sean Yates, that this man has a very violent position. You see how low he gets on the handlebars there, getting himself into an almost crouched position there, getting himself very small like a ball on the bike, making himself aerodynamic as much as he can. He's picked up the speed since he came over the top of that climb, and he's really picking his way around these corners very rapidly indeed. Not once has he really looked over his shoulder and slowed down at all. He must feel completely confident now as these riders go past the banner, indicating to them that they have 3 kilometers left to go in this year's Liege Bastogne Liege. Certainly very energetic, this rider. Every time he feels that he's not going as fast as he wants to, he's out of the saddle and still holding the bottom of the handlebars, pulling the bike with as much energy as he can muster. A great performance by him. Now he's taken the chance to sit up a little bit, get a little bit more oxygen into those lungs of his as he heads down towards the finish line for what is going to be his second victory in Liege Bastogne Liege, and certainly I think one of his sweetest, because today being able to win on your own like this over the last 13.5 kilometers is the best way to win a race.
Well, he is just staying over by the crowd line here, but we can see him all of the way, and the riders behind will see the cars all around him. But now Bartoli is going to make a nice steady climb up to the line here without any problems at all. Italy continued to build in the, well, hardly domination, in the recent domination, yes, of Liege Bastogne Liege, certainly not if you go back to the year this all began back in 1892. The Italian flags, though, again flying high in the province of Liege as Michele Bartoli repeats his victory of a year ago.
It looked like there was a bit of recovery there also by Francesco Casagrande and Michael Bogard coming back up to the group containing Rodolfo Massi and Laurent Jalabert, but none of that's going to bother this man. Wearing number 1 as the winner last year, he certainly came out and rode this race perfectly. He waited until he pulled back a certain amount of that breakaway advantage of Evgeny Berzin from 3 minutes down to about 54 seconds, and then he attacked on the Côte de Sarre-Tilmont, where I don't think anybody would have expected it, because I think most of the strategy of the riders this morning would have been to save it for as long as possible and hit them hard on the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. But this man had it all worked out and went much earlier than that.
Well, Jalabert's eased back now. I think he wants another bite of the cherry here. Casagrande is up there. Bogart is there. Massi will have to try again. As Michele Bartoli now see the finishing line almost in front of him there as he just keeps the pressure on until he gets right up to it. He mustn't ease back now. The World Cup holder of 12 months ago is now going to be right up there amongst the leaders. This should be good enough. In fact, it depends on the line behind him to give him the new lead in the World Cup. So Franco Ballerini held it for one race. He loses it in the next one. And now the defending World Cup holder will pull on the white jersey as the new World Cup leader. It's all over. It's time to sit up now, have a smile, enjoy the moment. He certainly worked hard enough for it because he gave us a tremendous show as he broke clear of the leaders. And that time is indicating he has won the fastest Liege Bastogne Liege ever, and the first event in excess of 40, just below 39.97. They may round it up, but it's still the best Liège ever. Now the sprint for second place. Jalabert has tried and lost. Massi has tried and lost. Casagrande is a reasonable sprinter, so too is Bogart. Frankie van den Broek is hanging off the back there and just hoping he can reach them before they start sprinting. And Laurent Jalabert doesn't really want to go too soon. He doesn't trust his legs too much this year. He has had a number of second places and not so many wins this time around, but he seems to just climbed away from them, Paul. He has simply ridden them off on the climb.
Thinking he's ridden them off there with frustration, because every time he's gone away and attacked, he's been pulled back. But this time he waited for a little bit of recovery, and once he put the pressure on, in fact, I think Rodolfo Massi had pushed himself just a little bit too much to pull him back up to Laurent Jalabert, and then once it all came back together again, Jalabert felt very strong. But the day certainly belongs to this man, Michele Bartoli, the winner of this year's Liege Bastogne Liege, and for Laurent Jalabert, exactly the same as last year. Second place for him, more than a minute behind.
So Jalabert comes to the line for what will be his 5th significant second place this season, and indeed his win tally will stay on 99 as a professional. He gets second again for the second year running. And the sprint for third place, Massi has got the legs, yes. Massi takes it from Casagrande and Bogart, and then we should see Frank van den Broek come over the line, but no, it's going to be Andrea Perron who comes over, and then Frank Brandenbroek. So that's the order of the day. And I have to say that no, Perron was behind Van den Broek. So it'll be 6th for Van den Broek and 7th for Andrea Perron. So there is the winner, Michele Bartoli of Italy. He looks a little bit tired at the moment. It'll all dawn on him pretty soon. He's also the new leader of the World Cup. And so the riders continue to dwindle in after what has been a tremendous Liege Bastogne Liege this year. It seems to be the way all of the classes are going. We've had some great daily battles amongst the top men. So just to confirm the result, a win for Michele Bartoli of Italy. His time is 6 hours, 37 minutes, 29 seconds. That was a record speed today. Laurent Jalabert second again. The top two the same as a year ago. A new name on the block there, Rodolfo Massi in third, Casagrande fourth, and Frank Van den Broek continues to improve. This time, his young legs bringing him home in 6th place. Until the next time we meet, and I hope it's not too long away, from Paul Sherwen, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye.